Well, hello, my name is Lisa Williams, and welcome to the Oil Tribe podcast. We have a very special guest today that I am delighted to welcome, Rafe Britton. And thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
I think we have just so much that we can talk about. I'm sure we could talk for hours, but we're going to try to keep it tight today and talk about a few things that are kind of very near and dear to our hearts. But why don't you tell us just kind of a little bit about your journey, because it's a pretty neat journey of how you've gotten to this point, and you've really become such a social media influencer for our industry. And I think it's a great story. So why don't we start there?
Okay, so like most people in our industry, I tend to find I've asked this question a few times of people when I go to industry events. I generally ask them, how did you get into the industry? And it tends to split probably about 90-10. So 10% of people are in the business because it's a family business, right? So a lot of people, long family history, they always knew that they were going to go into the industry. Roughly the other 90% will say by accident. So I'm part of the accidental group.
So am I.
Yeah. So I was working as a drilling engineer. So I kind of come from the operations side of the business. I was working as a drilling engineer for ExxonMobil. I did that for probably 8 years, drilling gas wells all around the world. And then found out that my wife was pregnant. So I kind of wanted to move home, be closer to the family. At the time, I was in the jungles in Papua New Guinea. And there just weren't any projects kind of running at the time. So I was actually going to quit. I was going to leave the industry completely. And my boss at the time, Matt Tenney, just give him a shout out because he did change the course of my life, internally went around and asked if there were any jobs going, and he found a job as a field engineer in the lubricants division. And I had absolutely no idea what that was, but they were going to pay me, so I took it. And that's how I ended up as a field engineer. I went out on my own as an independent consultant about three and a bit years ago. And that was during the COVID times, right?
Right.
So terrible idea to start a business when you still have a mortgage, you've got a wife that's on third maternity leave. Just terrible idea. But one of the things that we were doing during COVID, I'm sure you remember, you're probably involved in a lot. There was a lot of online training going on.
Yes.
Everyone wanted to kind of utilize the time to do online training. So what I found was that I was doing the same training sessions over and over. Everyone was like, I want to do oil analysis 101. I want to understand viscosity. And to me, it was kind of like, this is silly. I should just record these lessons and then put them somewhere where everyone can go. And if they've got questions afterwards, they can ask. So that's when I created the YouTube channel. I call it Lubrication Explained because it does what it says on the tin.
Sure.
And then it just kind of picked up a little bit of momentum, and that's kind of where we are today.
Yeah. Now, and how many followers do you have now?
Good question. I think on the YouTube channel it's about 25,000, something like that.
That's great. That's
which
fantastic.
It's a small industry, so but it's been nice. It's opened up a lot of doors. I get to meet really cool people, and yeah, it's been really nice.
That's great. That's a cool story. So, tell me a little bit about this when you took the job as a lubrication engineer and you were kind of in this uncharted territory of learning about it, because that's how I learned too. I was like, okay, I came out of school, I was a chemist, but I didn't take a single tribology course when I was in university. And I really learned a lot on the job, and very oil analysis specific types of courses were huge for me. And I'm sure they were imperative for your success as well.
Yeah. So internally at Mobil, they had a pretty good training program from memory. But a lot of it was just learning in the field, to be honest. So there was a lot of just throw you in the deep end and you just have to learn. The one story that I always remember that kind of sticks in my head was a customer from the forestry industry, reaching out and saying, we've got an issue with our debarker. And with projecting all the confidence in the world, I'm like, yeah, I got it. I'll see you tomorrow. I'm driving out there, having zero idea what a debarker is. It's a machine that strips the bark off the wood. And then furiously reading the manual, trying to figure out what it is, how it works, how it could have failed. And to me, that's kind of the most exciting part of our industry, right? It's almost like, what's that show? Mike Rowe, he's like Dirty Jobs. It's like living that out in real life.
Sure is.
Because we get to cut across every single industry. And to me, that's the excitement of kind of what we what we do. And
It
being able
really
to learn
is.
on the go, it's not for everyone, but I tend to find that's why, that 90% of people that get sucked into the industry by accident, very few of them leave, because I think that's sort of the attraction of it.
Yeah, kind of the thrill of solving the problem. And I had to learn that early on in my career as well. It's like there isn't maybe necessarily, there could be several right answers to this, and kind of giving yourself the ability to figure that out. And then once you do figure it out, you're like, oh, yeah, I want more.
Yeah.
So, well, I kind of want to transition more into the lab and kind of talk a little bit about your experiences with labs. And we all know that it's kind of becoming really of a hybrid type of scenario in our industry. Some may use third parties, some may use on-site, some may use sensor technology, some may use all. And I just kind of wanted to get your feel on what kind of trends you're seeing in the industry, as far as maybe any advice you would give to folks.
Good question. So I think, like all things, you hope that the industry is kind of maturing as we go along. And I think oil analysis as a whole, people are starting to view it a little bit differently. So I think early on, you'd probably say most people were doing oil analysis because they had to.
Check
we're
box.
we're just sending samples off because either the OEM told us to, or it's written in some manual. And there was very little attention that was sort of paid to the results and all that sort of stuff. And then part of it is that also the technology progressing, right? Being able to have field-based units and being able to have online sensors. Maybe 10, 20 years ago, that sort of thing didn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
So part of it is how oil analysis is viewed. Part of it is also what technology is available. Now I think we're getting to a state of maturity where I think we're going to maybe view this, let's say the three different types of technology, and view them kind of as being complementary to each other, rather than we are going to do one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
The analogy that I kind of always give is, let's say some of the other condition monitoring technologies like vibration analysis. People are well aware that there are different levels of vibration analysis, right? So maybe on a large gas turbine, you'll have an inline sensor, which is giving you constant data.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes sense because the value of the asset is so high. We want to be able to see, within seconds whether there's a disruption event. But then you've also got a couple of different levels. Let's say, for example, SKF sells a little, I don't know if anyone's ever seen one. It's a little vibration unit. It's about yay big that you stick on an electric motor, and it will give you a very basic level of vibration analysis of kind of traffic light, right?
Yeah.
Are we in a good or a bad state?
Right.
Then there's that next level down, which is, hey, we've got our readout. We're going to do all the polar plots. We're going to do the frequency analysis to really hone in on exactly where the dysfunction is and what that leads to down the line. And in vibration analysis, everyone is well aware that there's those three levels, and we apply them differently depending on what the need is. And so to me, that's exactly where oil analysis is going to go to, right? So there'll be online units. Let's say, for example, going back to the gas turbine example, if you've got a $50 million turbine, the relative cost of an oil sensor versus the quality of the real-time information that you can get, it's like a no-brainer.
Sure.
It absolutely makes sense to do that. And you've got some of these, newer kind of IR units that'll give you oil degradation and things like particle count in real time. Then you've got the field units, which are, to me, they hit this sweet spot of maybe we have assets in the field which are high value. We want to trend them really frequently, and we want that sort of like next level down of analysis. Totally makes sense to be able to take those units into the field. And then I think there's always going to be a place for kind of commodity sampling, right? Which is that, the oil analysis that we all kind of know, and I was going to say know and love, but we all know and tolerate.
Sure.
Which is, we're applying that sort of mass idea to basically every asset.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, there's actually a fourth level, which then sits underneath that, which I think is kind of where I play, which is the more like customized, maybe root cause type lab analysis, right? Where maybe you're doing that that sort of ferrogram, filtergram. We're doing filter debris analysis, which is not quite volume scale lab analysis,
Right.
but sort of sits in that root cause stuff. So so I think eventually, hopefully, we're going to get to that level of maturity where we can say, hey, these are all distinct technologies that all have their place, and it's about matching the technology to the application.
Sure. Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. And as you were talking, I was thinking about our TrueView 360 software. So our TrueView 360 software works with our MiniLab system. And what's coming down the line for what's in development right now is our prognostics, using some artificial intelligence, some smart technology, if you will. And one of the aspects of that is assigning kind of a criticality in order to get basically your risk tolerance and understanding what your risk tolerance is. And I think that is such a important piece too, of like understanding criticality along with helping you decide what testing needs to be done and how it needs to be done. So I think that we are evolving, we're getting there, and I think vibration analysis is definitely a good model for us. So thanks for bringing that up. As far as like industry specific, where are you seeing some trends of maybe on-site being done more frequently versus third party being used? Like, what are some challenges that are you seeing that maybe are leading people to more sensor type of technology or on-site, those sorts of things?
Yeah, so for me, it's a combination of things. So one might be like we were talking about. I keep coming back to the gas turbine example because it's just, if we've got such an expensive asset, it makes sense to gather as much data as possible. And there's already a range of sensors that are on those units, whether it's bearing temperature sensor, oil temperatures, vibration. So we're already collecting all that data in real time. It makes sense to collect oil data in real time.
Right.
There's a couple of other instances where that might be relevant too. Let's take, for example, wind turbines. There, it's maybe less about the value of the asset than it is about the pain of having to take a sample, having to go up tower, collect samples, send it off for analysis.
For sure, yeah.
It's more the inconvenience.
Have you ever been up one?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
It's a long way.
It is a long way.
It's so tiring. I just can't believe what they have to do for an oil change.
Yeah,
that's a whole other thing. Then I think you've also got the in terms of the field type analysis, the value of being able to do sampling in the field on assets where you want that sort of next level of information as well. So going back to the gas turbine example, the field lab, actually the 58 that you've got behind you.
Yeah.
One of the things that I really kind of like about that model is the capacity to do the XRF wear analysis on the patch. So one thing that the inline sensors do not do at the moment is any kind of elemental analysis. So you can know that you might have some level of wear debris occurring through the online sensors, but you can't pinpoint what part of the turbine is wearing. So let's say, for example, if we have a fear that it is a white metal bearing from the tilting pads, that will show up right on the XRF analysis where it won't for the inline.
Yeah.
So to me, the 58 is actually almost perfectly suited to like that sort of power gen gas turbine application. Then you've probably also got something like the mining industry, where again, huge equipment, heavy equipment, and you want field data, right? You want the capacity to, maybe it's because you want to test very frequently where, for lab oil analysis, right, where you're sending it off to a third party, maybe you're only testing these units every 3 months, every 6 months, every 12 months.
Right.
But there's some, you might identify a certain machine which has been problematic. Oh, we want to keep a really close eye on that. And we want to be testing it every week so that we can develop that data density so we get a trend. That to me is a huge value of the field units.
Sure.
And then on top of that, in mining, grease analysis. This is something that I've kind of been harping on a bit over the last maybe year or so, because let's say I teach a lot of the MLA1 programs, and in Australia, most of the students are from the mining industry.
Mm-hmm.
And if you ask, what do you think is more important to reliability? Is it oil or grease? And generally, people will have the understanding of, well, they're as important as each other because they're both lubricants. Great. So who does oil analysis? Every hand goes up. And who does grease analysis? None.
Still a tough market.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of like, well, why?
Mm-hmm.
Like, give me the reasons why.
Yeah.
And some of them are valid, right? Some people will talk about the quality of the sampling and all that sort of stuff without knowing that our friend Rich
That's right.
has a standard way to sample all sorts of different units.
Not only that, there is also an ASTM standard.
There is an
Yeah.
ASTM standard for
Mhm.
it, and people are completely unaware of this.
Yeah.
So you can get them over the hump of, well, you can make your sampling program consistent.
Right.
And then, let's say, for example, in the Spectra units, let's take the Ferrocheck as an example. That's a very easy way of trending ferrous density.
Mm-hmm.
So in a lot of bearing applications, for example, if I want to know the amount of wear over time, in the field,
Right.
I can be testing that with regularity.
Yes.
And maybe what we discover is that a specific bearing is not having an issue, so we don't need to continue to test it on as regular a basis.
Sure.
So to me, that's also sort of the value here.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, between the what's the fluid scan, which can also test greases for degradation.
Yep.
And then the Ferrocheck, which could do the ferrous density.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, there's the capacity to do sort of like in-field
Right.
grease analysis. as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And a really good screening technique. Like you say, if you see elevated wear levels, okay, maybe we need to go on and we need to do elemental. Okay, maybe that we would need to farm that out if we don't have the tools on site. Or if we would see some differences in the fluid scan that we don't like, high moisture levels or severe oxidation or something like that. Okay, we need to look at that a little bit more carefully.
Yeah.
So for sure, yeah, it's a great application there to do on site. So, well, is there anything else that you would like to add? But kind of before we wrap up here, I want to definitely give you an opportunity to maybe just give some advice to people that are maybe new to the industry and are feeling that same way that we did. And I just got put in a job and I can't believe that this is my job. I didn't learn this in university or anything like that. And what do I do? Like maybe some advice to kind of give some closing thoughts there.
Good question. So part of it, unfortunately, is you just need time.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe don't be so hard on yourself early on. It may feel like you're drowning in information. That's perfectly normal. You may not feel like it at the time. You will eventually build expertise in a bunch of different fields. So that's one of the things, is just like trust the process.
Mm-hmm.
But along with that is try and read as widely as possible. And probably the other thing is try to get connected with as many people in the industry as possible as well. So that's one thing that I probably didn't do as well as I should have when I was inside of the mobile world.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when you're with one of the oil suppliers, the tendency is to be quite insular. You might learn off people within the same company, but you don't tend to reach out all that much. And I think there's so many good people in our industry who are willing to share their knowledge.
For sure.
Connecting with all those people has been probably the best thing I've done over the last 3 years, mainly because our industry spans so widely, no one has all the answers. Right? You are going to encounter applications that you know absolutely nothing about. And the capacity to pick up the phone and ask someone who does know the answers, that's where like the real value is.
For sure.
In sort of knowing people, and people are so willing to share their knowledge. It's not like there's a whole bunch of trade secrets going on.
Yeah.
And so, that's the thing I kind of love about the industry.
I agree. Mentorship, I think getting out and talking to people is huge for me early on and continues to be. And I think our industry does a really good job with the conferences. I know you're headed to Lube Expo here in a few days, and so is Spectra Scientific. So, we do a really good job with connecting people at our different conferences and sharing knowledge. So Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and wish you all the luck and safe travels. And
Thank you.
we'll see you on YouTube again soon.
Yeah, sounds
So,
good.
all right. Well, thank you so much for joining us for the Oil Tribe podcast, and we will catch you next time. Thanks.